So we're super excited to be here this morning. I'm honored to introduce Cory Hewett from Gimme Vending. I had the chance to meet Cory, pushing 4 years ago now?
Yeah, right around 3 or 4 years ago.
3 or 4 years ago. And so Karen, who runs the Tech Village, she's like, hey, I got this guy that you have to meet. Super energetic, crazy resourceful, doing some really awesome stuff. And so we sat down on the second floor looking out over the main lobby and hit it off, just talked about entrepreneurship, talked about some of our life story, talked about some of his dreams and visions.
I had no idea that was a pitch at that moment. I thought we were just chatting.
And so I was like, this guy is going places. And so we've been working together ever since. So Cory, I'd love for you to tell the audience, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial background, some of your side hustles growing up and how you got here today.
So my mom said my first word was bitte, which in German is please. And I'd go around and say, like, please, I need to go buy something in German when we lived in Germany. So she said that was kind of the start of the entrepreneurship right there. When I made it to elementary school, of course, the cliche lemonade stand, thankfully it didn't get shut down by any lack of permits. The community supported that. And then when I made it to high school, started a gumball business. So I had gumball machines. My first one was a 6 foot tall, red spiral gumball machine, quarter in, and the gumball would spiral all the way down, take it out. It was great. The gumballs are $0.015 a piece, sell for 25 cents. It was a good start into what we created for today.
So not too many high schoolers are running around buying gumball machines and putting them in businesses. What was the genesis for the gumball vending idea?
I really like cars. My dad had crushing news when I was about 15, and that would be they wouldn't be buying me one. So he gave me a couple ads for places I could apply, and I realized I wanted a really cool car. I would have to make more than they were paying 15-year-olds.
So where did the gumball machines lead?
So we traded up. I traded up the gumball machines to snack and soda machines, and ultimately had a small route of 26 vending machines.
So you're in high school, and you have 26 vending machines?
26 vending machines. I was running that at the same time that I ran a DJ business. I wasn't the DJ, but I would go out and get the contracts. So the truck, I had a truck. It worked out great, a really pretty truck that the gumball business helped me buy, and I was running the vending route by day and the DJ business by night.
And so do you just walk into Costco and say, hey, I'd like to buy a vending machine? Or what's the process for procuring and placing? How do you get the businesses to take them?
So I did that for my very first one, but it's very expensive. It was a $1,000 gumball machine, and I realized that's a lot of gumballs to pay for that machine you buy them used. So Costco was number one. Then I started using Craigslist to buy 2 through 26 and buying decent quality used machines. And then for me, I went up to the different businesses and said, I'd like to put a machine here, and it would be a benefit to your team, your employees, and also it would help me ultimately go to college. And so it helped me save on commission and helped me get some of those early placements.
So give us your elevator pitch to the business owner when you walk in as a 16, 17-year-old and saying, hey, I want to put a $1,000 vending machine in your business. Give us that pitch to Mrs. Business Owner.
So it was a little more aggressive than that. Usually I'd go in and place it first, especially with the gumball machine. I'd place it and I'd say, my name is Cory, this is going to help me go to college, here's my phone number, and I'll be back tomorrow if you want me to remove it. And then I'd leave.
And people would go for that?
I had a couple people say, like, get that out of here, I'm going to throw it on the street. But a lot of people were like, I'm like, thank you so much. This is a big, big help for a young entrepreneur. And it would stay.
And it would stay. Wow. And so once you had the 26 vending machines, how did you keep them stocked? How did you keep them current with inventory?
So that was more of a challenge. I started writing everything down, and I realized a lot of my peers were doing the same thing. You'd walk up, and you'd track, I need 6 bags of this, 3 bags of this. Then you'd have your parents drive you to Costco's, and then you'd go buy those things, and you'd have them drive you back to the vending machine. You'd restock it. That wasn't all of my peers. Most of them had cars, but they had licenses too. Mm-hmm. So when I first got started, it was parents driving me back and forth, writing down everything I needed, going buying it, and refilling it.
And so give us some economics of a normal vending machine. Bag of chips for $1, and it cost you what?
So the typical margin is 50% on an item. So if you see it for $1.25, it usually costs them 67 cents. Mm-hmm. And I kept those same margins as well.
Were there certain items that were hot sellers, or was it just your vanilla candy bars and potato chips type thing?
So, I mean, we always have some things that performed really well. Snickers do awesome everywhere. But then, whether you have a location in a library, certain snacks sell better than if you have a location in a chicken factory. Pork rinds sell great in chicken factories and not so great at libraries. And so I thought, well, every machine will be the same. I'll just stock them identically. It'll make it really easy to go shopping. I just need to buy 45 products total, and it'll be great. But then I realized some things did great in areas, some things not in others.
So you're in high school, you got 26 vending machines, you're going to college. What happens to the vending machine business?
So I left Georgia and went up to Boston to go to college at Babson. And so I had to hire
Babson, one of the most famous for entrepreneurship.
It was a great entrepreneurship college, actually. And I had to pay one of my classmates that I met in high school to help manage this route of 26 vending machines. And I had to trust that if he wrote down that he collected $50 out of this machine, that there was actually, not more than $50 in the machine.
And how did it go?
So that was the beginning of the business that Evan and I run today. Having to wonder he's a trustworthy guy, but just, when you're in college and the bills in Babson are not inexpensive and you're wondering, is the money that we're collecting all the money out there? Are the products optimized the right way? It actually inspired me to start thinking about, do other vending operators have the same challenge? And it was amazing because at that point I had 26 machines. I started talking to people with 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 vending machines, and they had the same complaint. Their drivers went out, they wrote down how much money they collected from it and brought it back. And that seemed like a pretty big problem.
So you're at Babson in Boston. What caused you to transfer to Georgia Tech?
So it's ironic. It's a really, really good school for entrepreneurship. And everyone I met wanted to become an investment banker. So I went to Georgia Tech, which is a really, really great school for engineering. And everyone I met there, like Evan, wanted to become an entrepreneur. So went to Georgia Tech to get instilled with the technical knowledge so that I could go out and build something and be an entrepreneur.
And so the vending machine business still running, or did you end up selling it or shutting it down? What was the culmination there?
So we put everything in to start the Gimme business. Sold the route, sold everything that I had, and Evan and I put everything in to start the company we have today.
And so take us through the process of the Georgia Tech CreateX experience. What was that like?
So the CreateX experience was really, really good. It started with, for us, kind of like a classroom setting, how to be an entrepreneur. It's like, oh, I know how to sell gumballs, so I already know how to be an entrepreneur. They're like, no. You need to learn how to legally set up a company. Apparently, you can't just go around, collecting money. And
so the vending machine business might or might not have been a real company?
It may or may not have been a real company in the eyes of the state.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could all go back to 16, the whole permit thing, like with lemonade stands, and you got to pay sales taxes. It's interesting. We do pay sales tax, and we are a legal company now, just to make sure you're aware of that. But yeah, the gumball business in the eyes of the state wasn't a real one. So CreateX, of course, helped us with the official administration of a business. How do you set it up? Do you choose LLC or C Corp? Here are the pros and cons. How do you divide up shares between co-founders? How do you handle fights between co-founders? We started with 4. There are 2. So they led us through the administration, and they also hammered something that stuck with us. That was customer discovery. And they put it in the words, "Gudub," get out of the building. And every day we'd walk in, they'd be like, get out of the building. Like, we just arrived. They're like, get out of the building. And we'd go out and talk to customers and be in the field and learn from them.
And so was that after your sophomore year or junior year? What year was that?
So that was my senior year.
Senior year.
They tried to only open up the program to seniors who had graduated. But I was a senior with 1 semester left, so I started. They told me, great, this is great. You'll finish up your last semester, and then you can do the startup thing. So I started the business. Evan and I started the business. He graduated. I was a semester away, and I guess I still have a semester left.
So it was the semester after your non-graduating senior year, and you go through the CreateX program, and then what? What happened? What's the culmination of that program?
So at the end of the program, we got our first $20,000 in non-dilutive cash. And that was...
How do you get $20,000 in non-dilutive? What are the terms, or is it just here's a grant and have fun? What does that look like?
It was, we haven't finished the legalities on how we're going to protect this money, but we have to give it away before it disappears, so do your best. That was we were the only cohort that had that. Now you have to give away equity in order to be able to get that cash. So
But they were desperate to write you a check, and you didn't have to give them any equity.
No equity, they wrote a check.
That sounds pretty good.
It was a great deal. Maybe Atlanta Ventures can consider.
Yes, I think that's a great,
the strategy
great business
of just.
model.
I'm not sure how to monetize that on your end, but startup world is crazy. The economics are just creative.
What a time to be an entrepreneur.
So the cohort changed, unfortunately. We found out that year 2 cohort, they gave up the equity. So it was special to be part of that group. The 20,000 sounded great, except our business, compared to some other businesses, had to build a physical product. We built a little thing that plugs into vending machines to do all the counting. And we got a quote from our first contract manufacturer for $125,000 just to build the first prototype at a commercial level. So that 20 grand felt great till I realized there's 105 short. And that created new challenges.
So when you went into CreateX, what was the idea? And then by the end of CreateX, with the customer discovery and a bunch of time and training, what did the idea end up being? What is Gimme today, but what was it at the CreateX time?
When we first got started, we thought we were going to build the coolest credit card swiping, Apple Pay accepting box with a screen that could do ads and tell you nutritional info, accept money, and it could be great in that way. That's what Evan and I felt would be really attractive to the industry.
Sort of like the Square iPad system, but on a vending machine.
On a vending machine. And what we learned from customer discovery is we consumers may enjoy the experience of shopping better with that, but our customers, who would ultimately write a check for that or not, had no interest in paying any money for a cool screen to go on the outside of a vending machine.
Why is that?
They helped us learn that some of the pains that I had early on, like cash theft, understanding product placement, understanding product tracking for purchasing and restocking, were pains that they had even at scale as well. A guy with 5,000 machines told me it's like running a grocery store, but your shelves are in different states, and people have to use the telephone game to tell you what's going on. And it was a nightmare for him to try to manage just with pen and paper.
So these big vending machines didn't already have some electronic system in them to keep track of what was sold and inventory and whatnot?
So you're teasing me. As a technical entrepreneur, I love to go into the back of it. But a vending machine, it has a spiral and the snacks fit inside of it. And every time you put a quarter in and it rotates, it's like an odometer. It just says, I've rotated 1 time, I've rotated 2 times, I've rotated 3 times. And that's the only thing a vending machine knows. You walk up to it, and it's like, hello, how are you, vending machine? It says, I've rotated 10 times. And you're like, today is like ever. So if you want to know how many things have sold, you have to ask it from time to time, like, hello, vending machine, how many today? It's like 6,000. You go back tomorrow, it's like 6,075. And you have to say, okay, so the difference between the two is 75. So it's like an odometer.
And now is it per row or per item or just the whole machine?
So it does do it per row, but it doesn't know what's in the row. So it just
per
knows
item in the row or the whole entire row?
the whole row.
The whole row.
Oh, we call them spirals, each spiral slot. So a typical snack machine will have 45 slots. A bottle machine that the cans fall out of might have 6. And so it just knows, slot 6 turned. Once you have a big company, it's like it turned 105,602 times ever. And you have to do the math to figure out how many that meant since yesterday. So that's the only thing a vending machine knows. In order for a person who owns it to know, oh, A1 means Doritos, that's when a human being gets involved and has to write down, I put Doritos in A1, and here's how much we're charging for it. And that's what our software does.
So at the start of CreateX, you were thinking cool iPad, swipe, payment system. By the end of CreateX, were you thinking what Gimme is today, or were you still sort of on that path to what Gimme is today?
So the customer discovery through CreateX is what helped us transition from cool, fancy iPad swipey thing to less sexy but more practical for our customers, understand your inventory and don't get stolen from thing. And that happened in the span of a summer.
So the machine, right now, basic vending machine, how does it tell the business owner that row A2 turned?
So that's where our hardware comes into play. We have a little retrofit device that plugs into vending machines, and every so often it sends back, here's the status of all the rows. And as we check it, we get to see, okay, it rotated another time, so we know that it vended one more or two more. Then that helps us understand, okay, -5 on this spot, we need to go out and fill it back up soon.
And so you invented the Gimme key, a piece of hardware that plugs into the machine. But where does the data from that hardware go? How does it actually get back to something else?
So JC, thank you for the graphic behind me. On the green box, we have the Gimme key. It looks like a little guitar jack with a little black piece at the end. And that's because vending machines use guitar jacks to communicate that data. And then it talks to an iPad that people carry, or the employees of the company carry around with them. It's what allows them to say, I just added Doritos here, or I moved 2 things around. It collects information from the Gimme key, sends it up over cellular to the cloud.
So the person restocking the machines walks up to it with an iPad. The Gimme key has Bluetooth LE in it, so it's got a battery. The battery lasts approximately how long?
About 5 years.
About 5 years, so it's got a little battery. The Gimme key is constantly sending out over Bluetooth what the current inventory or the current count is for each of the spirals. iPad comes into range of it, says, hey, something's sending some Bluetooth. It communicates with the app on the iPad, and then what happens?
So then it goes back to the cloud, and that's where we compare it to other machines and it to the warehouse management system. And we can say things like, in aggregate, you've sold a bunch of Doritos, so it's time to consider reordering those. You've got a driver that's in the field. You may need to put some Doritos on their truck and send them back out to go refill it.
And so before the Gimme key and system, what was the workflow for the vending machine owners?
So you had 2 types of workflow. One was getting a person to the machine itself, and another one was at the machine itself. And the getting people to the right machine at the right time was its own challenge. How do you make sure you have the right products on the truck before you leave for the day? How do you make sure that you're hitting all the machines that need to be hit in the most efficient way possible? Instead of literally just going out and saying, I have 100 machines, I think I'll visit these 10 today and these 10 the next day. So the first challenge was understanding the route of vending machines, knowing what's inside each one of them, and then helping the operator stock the right things in the truck before they go out. Once they get to the machine, that was another place where our software made a big difference to these people's lives, is the speed of refilling a vending machine. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen someone restock, but they can put products in a machine really fast. It's, they have 10 fingers, there's a box of products, there's an empty vending machine, and they go down and they come back up like this and they have 8 products. It's like magic. It's just, and all of a sudden they have 8 products, they roll them into the row, and that part's done. They can actually put product in a machine in 15 seconds. Then they go to write things down, and it's like, time stands still. Here they are putting 100 products in a machine in 5 seconds, and then it takes them 10 minutes to write down what's going on. So with the software, we've cut that down way less than half the time. They go up, everything's happening automatically in the background. So they're filling, it's figuring out what's already been put in their box, so they don't have to write that down. It's already figured out what's sold, so they don't have to write that down either. So they stock, check, leave.
And so what are they checking when they check?
So they're making sure that Doritos are actually in A1, that the right number of products are put in the box. The people at the warehouse may forget, so they're confirming oh yeah, I did put 6 of those in there. But for us, an ideal software experience is when the user doesn't have to tap anything. They look, it matches, they lock it, they walk away.
So is one of the challenges in the market having the same item on different numbers? So Doritos in one machine is A1 and the other machine it's B5, and is that one of the challenges?
So one of the challenges for us is drivers might switch things around. They go up, there are 3 empty spots, and they put whatever they want, wherever they want. And then you have A1 selling, and the software thinks A1 is one thing that it's not.
And so how does your software help with that?
So we introduced a full-screen planogram, which are just a picture-based system for how to put things where. And we noticed that drivers were using colors. They weren't reading that it was Doritos. They just saw blue boxes in the top left-hand corner, so they looked in their box. They grabbed all the blue bags. They put them there. They looked down. The red goes into the second one. Orange goes into the third one. And we found that drivers were way fast and way accurate when we did it that way.
And so before, it was a little bit haphazard. Some drivers were more detail-oriented than others, and some were just, however fast I can get into the machine, I'm just going to do that and move on?
So we look at a couple KPIs, key performance indicators for how well the software is doing. One of them is time in the field, and we're saving at least 30 minutes a day for drivers that adopt our system. We look at bringbacks, so that's the number of products that go into a truck but then ultimately go back to the warehouse if they're not used. We've helped some customers go from almost 20% bringbacks. We have one that's down to almost 1% bringbacks now after implementing the system, so that's just an incredible reduction in food waste. And then we also look at sales. And so if you walk up to a machine and it doesn't have Snickers, you're angry and you don't go back to the machine. You're actually hangry and you don't want to go back to the machine. But if you walk up and it's fully stocked and you grab the Snickers and it's a good experience, then you go back and you shop more. So we see, in total, a lift to sales as well.
That's awesome. So why does the Gimme key send the data over Bluetooth back to the iPad? Why not just send it straight to the cloud and bypass the iPad?
So for those of you who played guitar and plugged it in, it's an unpowered port. You'd have to plug your amp in to be able to get power to the guitar. Same thing is true for the vending machine. There's power in the vending machine, but there's no power on the port that has the data. So in order to build something that would last for a long time, it had to be pretty low energy. So we picked BLE because it could be a battery-powered device that never needed to be recharged, but it could still last years and years and years. If we put a little cellular chip on it, it would last as long as an iPhone. And so it'd be dead in a couple hours or a couple days, depending on how much you used it.
How price conscious are vending machine owners? Are they willing to invest in upgrading to newer technology?
It's a tough market. These guys are tracking, it's 67.5 cents for this bag of chips. So if I buy something for the machine that costs $60, which is how we originally priced the Gimme key, that's a lot of bags of chips to move to be able to justify the cost. So we're in a market that's extremely price sensitive.
So you just mentioned your initial pricing. Take us through some of the pricing evolution from a business perspective.
So it's a blessing and a curse to be a hardware software startup, a HESAS, a hardware-enabled software as a service business. It's a curse because hardware needs inventory. It's expensive to start to build, the $125,000 in NREs just to get started. But it's a blessing sometimes when you can use it and make a profit off of it right away. We maybe have a unit cost of X a unit, but we can sell it for 2X. So for us, we started by charging upfront for the Gimme key and monthly for the software that we had.
And so take us through. Keep going.
Sure. So we started with this model. You could write us a giant check to get started. You have 1,000 machines, $60 a key. You write us a check for $60,000 so that we can get started working, and then you pay us $1,000 a month after that to keep the software rolling. Early adopters picked it up, but then sales started to go down when the average person's like, I'm not going to write a check for $60,000 to see if this will work for me. And we transitioned to an entirely SaaS-based pricing structure. Now people have the option to pay us $3 a month, and that's it. And we cover everything that they need, iPads, training, the Gimme key to go inside their machines, and the pricing evolved that way.
And so from a business point of view, now you have some financing challenges then. If you are outlaying the cash to buy the keys, but then now you're financing back to the customers. So how have you worked through some of those changes in your own business model?
We're still working through some of those changes in our business model. The better you do when you have to write a check at the beginning and wait over time to get it, the more customers that you sell, the more money you need to get the customers that you sold. So like, oh, Evan, great, like let's sign all the customers, but not too many too quickly, or our success will run us out of money and we'll die. So when you have to buy something physical up front, wait 12 weeks for it to be manufactured before you can deploy it. It's tricky. I don't know if you're probing for like an answer to that, but it's one that we're constantly looking at, trying to understand how can we stage deployments to make sure we're not deploying too quickly. How do we make sure that we bring on capital at the right time so that we don't run out? It's an important consideration.
It's a challenge. So let's segue into the capital side of the business. Take us through some of your funding history and how you've grown the business with angel investors.
So we got started with that first grant, $20,000 grant, non-dilutive, from Georgia Tech, but we needed a lot more money to be able to get the first commercial version of the unit built. So what we did is we went to one of the customers that we met during customer discovery. And we said, you told us, at that time we didn't let them know we were building anything. We were just there asking and learning, how does your business work? What are your biggest pains? What keeps you up at night? And they said, people stealing from me, not knowing what's inside my machines. Like, these are things that I really struggle with, and if you had something to fix it, I would write a check on the spot. So when we decided that's what we were going to build, Evan and I said, let's go back to that guy and talk to him again. So we went and said, hey, we have this prototype. It does these things, and I've written down that you'd write a check on the spot if we could build something to fix it. And they said, that's true. I said, great. I need a check, and we'll get you going to the first batch. And they wrote a check on the spot, and it was not for the $105,000 that we needed, but it was a $5,000 check to buy the first batch for one of their routes. And we used that as a way to start looking at attracting angel investment.
So you got a $5,000 check with no product.
And they knew it. So we didn't lie and say it's done. We said, here's a prototype, here's the value that it'll provide. But yes, to build it, I need your money to create the product that you want to buy. And they said, great, here it is.
That's pretty awesome. Lots of stories out there about customer discovery and about finding a pain that's so latent that they'll write you a check without even having the product. But in practice, it's 1,000 times harder than it sounds. But you actually got a check from somebody for a product that didn't exist. That's pretty amazing.
That's how Evan and I had the aha moment. And Evan's back there if you're wondering why I keep looking at that. But Evan and I remember we were in the car, we were driving away, and we parked for a minute. Of course, we high-fived. And we were like, I think this is something. And that's when I made the decision, instead of going back to school and kind of putting the business on pause, we were going to go 100% behind this thing.
Was there any family consternation for not going back to school? Or family was gung-ho, Cory's going to conquer the world?
Mom was like, what are you doing? I'm like, not only what am I doing, I still have like a $100,000 thing I need to buy. So, you and Grandma and everyone else, like, what do you think about? And she's like, so you're dropping out of school and you want money. I'm like, well, the two seem to go together. If you're dropping out of school, of course you need money, except this is going to go to, business, not just rent, which is also important. So we actually did do the family funding round. We were able to raise enough to meet the needs for the NREs, the non-recurring engineering costs, to create the first commercial unit. We got it deployed on the first route. They continued to buy more. We were able to use that money to grow to some point, and that's ultimately when we met you.
So take us through that process. So I wrote a check, $200,000 into the business. What happened to the money? What did you do with it?
So $450,000 original seed investment, and we needed to buy a bunch of hardware. That was going to obviously sell immediately. At least that's what my spreadsheet said. So David writes a check, and he's like, this is the best practice on how to use it. I said, but I need to buy, $100,000 worth of hardware, right now. So we did, bought the hardware. Much of it sold right away. Some of it didn't sell right away, so then it created new cash issues on the back end where there's a lot of cash in hardware, and we needed to sell it to get the cash back out, but then use that to buy more hardware. So that led us to use the money to buy stuff, use the money to continue selling and developing the software that we needed to, but ultimately left us needing a little bit more cash. So then we did a seed extension to buy more hardware and to continue on the R&D side.
Roughly how much money?
About another 200.
Another 200. Local angel investors?
Local angel investors. So David participated again, and we also introduced a couple other angel investors that we thought would be useful from a strategy and business standpoint. We used that money, continued to make more sales, and then earlier this year, we just raised a smaller Series A to continue the software development, continue with some new projects that we're working on that we just released a small video series about. That takes us to the red box markets. So our software is expanding, and I think that answers your question about the funding.
So the funding that you raised this year, was it from customers?
So we actually did have customers participate. We talked to customers and said, hey, you want us to continue with this product thing. We've learned you need to write a much bigger check. So we invited them to participate to help build a new product that they were asking for, and they did. So they wrote half the check for the investment, and we went to investors for the other half. It's standard investors for the other half.
And now we're able to get some of your existing customers to write checks for the new product as well, not as investors?
We did
before
both.
Having a product?
So we had a couple customers who loved the product, loved the value of it, and we wanted to deepen the relationship with them. We invited them to participate as investors, a very limited group. And the rest of our customers that we didn't necessarily want to be married to forever, we invited them to pre-purchase the new product, which they also did.
So you got more cash, non-dilutive, from existing customers to build a product that doesn't exist yet.
We're actually proud of it the second time. So we went up, we went to the customer, we said, customer, you've asked us for this new product. You have this new product called a micro-market, and you want our software to work on it. Yes, we do. I said, great. That'll be like between $10,000 and $50,000 if you want to be first in line for that product. They're like, you haven't started working on it. Like, haven't even started working on it at all, and here's the value to you. By writing a check right now, you get to participate in the development process. We're going to sit with you, and we're going to design it with you, and you'll have a lot of stake in what the end product ends up being. And that's a value that many of our customers bought into. We ended up we ended up pre-selling $250,000 worth of software that way.
So customer discovery to build a new product, and not only to build the new product from an information point of view, but actually to get the prospects excited to buy the new product before it's even ready and fund the development of it in exchange for them helping influence and be part of that process. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. It's our competitors in this space don't do customer discovery. They're smart guys who sit up in really nice office buildings, not here, somewhere else, and write software and then tell the people, here's what you will use. And that has not been an effective way to build products. So we went it completely differently. We said, we want to work with you on what it'll be. And that's a value that they really clung on to. They said, we want that. We want to participate. We want it to be responsive to our needs. And if we go in with you, we know that that'll happen.
So are you able to share anything about the micro markets, or you want to hold off on that?
So we need to hold off on that. The official unveiling will be probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks, but we can say that it'll be no hardware, pure SaaS, so that's exciting for us. And if you do want to learn more, our little video series about it is on our website now, vending.ai. We'll tell you and get you everything that you need to learn about our product if you're interested.
Awesome. So from a business point of view, obviously you've got some cash in the bank now. You got a new product that you're working on. What were some of the more interesting or difficult challenges of the past couple years, beyond the inventory challenge and beyond some of the other things we've talked about? What are some other things that come to mind?
If we start back at the beginning, sometimes we started with 4 co-founders. We then went down to 2, and that was the beginning of how important culture really is. And Evan and I were going to go 100%. I wasn't going to go back to school right away in order to work on this business. And the other 2 guys said, no, we're going to try to do both. We'll do Gimme part-time, and we'll do school full-time. And so the biggest lesson we've learned through that is how important culture is. People who share that mindset, whatever the culture is. Some businesses do great, I guess, if they treat it like a hobby. That's not my philosophy. From your blogs, I recognize that that's not your philosophy either. We wanted to be surrounded by people who were crazy. We wanted crazy, maniacal people who would work 22 hours a day, get up at 3 in the morning, get on a truck with a vending guy, which is when they start, spend 14 hours in the field sweating, moving product to figure out their life, learn how it works, and those are the people we wanted to be surrounded by. We also wanted to be surrounded by people who really, really wanted to win. Like, they took it personally if they lost. I see it. You've got the eyes. You're like, I don't lose. And we realized that's going to be one of the more important things to focus on is culture.
And so take us through some of the culture learnings.
So, culture learnings. At first, I was like, I'll just be able to wing it. We don't have to write a culture down. We'll just figure it out. We'll either jive or we won't jive. That's not an effective strategy, by the way. So we started writing down our culture. And number 1 for us is fiercely driven to win. And so we started trying to examine people who are interested in joining the team based on their ferocity, their fierceness for wanting to win. After that, we looked at how relentless they are, and trying to build ways to test that you can't just ask, like, hey, are you fiercely driven to win? You're like, well, I want the job, so yes. How do we design parts of the interview that will help us understand that? To take us on a side real quick, one of the most important ways that we learn the culture of a person is we have something called an IOE, an intense onboarding experience. And for us, that means before you're an official member of the team, you get up at 3 in the morning, you ride on a truck, we make sure that it's at least a 12-hour route, then we have someone else pick you up and drive you to a different state so that you can do it all again in a different time zone. You get up at 3 in the morning, ride on a truck, come back, you do that for a couple days. If you survive, we're like, that's great. You're very clearly relentless, a little bit crazy. We're not sure why you want to work that hard for a startup, but you're one of us. So that's one of the challenges, culture, and that's one of the ways that we've used to determine culture fit within our team.
So do you ride with them on that, or they go solo with one of your clients in the field at 3 a.m.?
So they go solo with one of the clients, a real life, real job. Sometimes it's clients of ours that have our system deployed. We've done it with people who don't have our system deployed, so they can see this is what it's like before Gimme, this is what it's like after the introduction of Gimme.
And so do they do that after they have a job offer, or is that?
Yeah, so we don't put all candidates through that. We know it's the one. We give them a job offer. We do pay them for their time on the truck, but we treat it like a probationary period. So if they come back and they say, yep, this is, it's good for them to learn too. Like, y'all are crazy. This is not a good fit for me. We'd rather learn that, day zero, right when we send them the job offer. So they do have a job offer. They do get paid, and we pay taxes on that too.
So how many of these 3 a.m. truck rides have you personally gone on over the years?
So Evan and I got started with ride-alongs and truck rides. So before we left CreateX, we had done over 200 interviews. Not all of them 14-hour-a-day interviews, but many of them were. Our very first one is a 14-hour-a-day interview. And I don't know, maybe 500 over the last 4 years.
And so what were some of the more eye-opening experiences from that?
The very first story? Okay. So here's Evan. He's my business partner. And he was totally bought into the idea of going to work for Gulfstream when he graduated from Georgia Tech. His parents and his girlfriend were totally bought into the idea of Evan going to work for Gulfstream when he graduated from Georgia Tech.
Everyone wants to design jets and cool planes and
have a regular salary. So I was like, hey, Evan, you should quit Gulfstream, and we should build this startup together, and for the first year, we'll pay each other nothing. And so he's like, that sounds great. Totally no fear. This is going to be wonderful. So our very first ride-along, our very first experience for him with a vending person in the field, I won't say his name. We're at a snack place where vending machine people hang out. We want to talk to them, so we're walking around trying to talk to them, and they're saying, please get out of my way, you're in my way. And we're saying, no, we just want to learn. We're from Georgia Tech. Tell us about your life. So he says, okay, fine, get on a truck, and we'll ride together. So Evan and I get on his truck. He takes us all throughout town. He's got his revolver right on his hip everywhere he goes. He's a southern guy. And he's like, why don't you come back to my warehouse after this? We're like, sure, we'll learn about your warehouse and what's going on there. And that's when the experience started to go downhill. So we get to his warehouse. He's like, by the way, I might live here a little bit too. I'm like, okay, this is fine. So he's sitting there. He's like, so we'll do a tour, but first, how about some blow? We're like, whoa, this went like 0 to 100 real fast. He's like, okay, we'll get to that later. Let's go walk through the warehouse, and I'll show you how everything works. We're like, okay, this is a track we're comfortable with. We'll get back on track. I see Evan's eyes like, why am I here? Why did I leave Gulfstream? It was air conditioned there. People weren't doing drugs visibly there. This is very scary. So we walk through. He's like, yeah, sometimes I throw foam parties in the back. You think you guys? We're like, whoa, let's get back on the vending side. Can we please focus on the vending? Oh, man, that was 10 hours later. I'm texting people like, if I don't make it out alive, here's my location. We're like, listen, you were very polite. I think people are looking for us. We should really get out of here. So Evan and I jammed and sitting in the car again. No high five after that one. He looks over at me like, are they all like this? And like, no, thankfully. They are not all like this. So that's probably the most wild customer.
And that was your very first one?
Numero uno.
Numero uno. Wow. That's pretty impressive.
It was petrifying. Evan, I'm proud of you for sticking in there and going on numero 2. So that was the wildest customer discovery story that we had. Other than that, some of the more crazy things that we've learned from a business standpoint were some of our early customers, they'd say, we have 10,000 vending machines. We're like, that's great. So you need to order 10,000 products. And they'd buy 10,000 products, which at the time was a really large check. And we'd get there and we'd get about 50% deployed based on the number of trucks they had, and we'd only have 3,000 of the units out. So we're like, maybe you don't have 10,000 products. We'd make it to 75% deployed, and we'd have 4,500 out there out of the 10,000. We'd make it to 90% deployed, and they'd be at 5,500 of the 10,000 units out there. And finally, we had to say to them, like, I don't know where you got your 10,000 machine count from, but you don't have that many vending machines. It's like, that's your business. In my head, that's your business. How do you not know how many vending machines that you have? So seeing how disconnected operators were from what was happening in the field to such an extreme extent, that was crazy from a business perspective.
So the business owner would look you in the eye and say, I have 10,000 machines. You went and outlaid a ton of capital to buy 10,000 pieces of hardware, and you would find out that they actually only had 6,000 machines?
Yes.
Wow. And where was the disconnect? Do you think it was ego? Do you think it was something else?
A combination of things. Ego, but if you're keeping track of everything pen and paper and word of mouth from the people who refill your machines, it's easy over 20, 30 years to eventually overcount, double count, accounts move, so you lose this chicken factory and the machines move over here. So were those new machines or old machines? How do you keep track of that? And they lost track. And a lot of our customers had lost track. So that wasn't one customer, that was the most extreme number, but a lot of customers had lost track of their machines, what's inside of them, how much cash they had sitting out there.
Wow. All right, it's time for questions. AT in the back has a microphone. Dan?
Can you speak to churn, both of the drivers, perhaps, for shrinkage, when you put your solution in place, and then your churn, if you have any?
So real quick, what does shrinkage mean?
Shrinkage on the product side. So shrinkage on the product side actually doesn't come from the consumer. The glass is real effective at preventing that shrinkage. So it's drivers who will either take the cash out, one for them, the rest for you, or take products, eat them, or give them away. Sometimes they will just take an entire tray of products and sell them. So shrinkage is the disappearance of products from the vending machine. As far as turnover as it relates to shrinkage, it's a pretty fast turn environment. Some drivers are great and they stick around forever, but many drivers, they get there and they find out it's a 14-hour day, you're on the back of a truck, you're loading things in and out, it's not a good fit for you, or they sometimes steal, you get found out and then you get fired. So I'd say it's pretty quick on the turnover rate for a lot of operators and a lot of their employees, some of their employees. No, that was independent of Gimme. What we've found is a slight boost to being able to keep and attract talent. So they went from longer days with more manual effort. You apply Gimme, and then it's a little bit shorter day with a little bit less manual effort, and you get to use something that's kind of neat. And we've found that helps differentiate being a vending driver from, say, working on a waste management truck, driving and picking up trash cans. Being able to use the iPad is just one nice little gold star that would help encourage you to one direction from the other. So I would say that Gimme has helped decrease turn somewhat for drivers at vending operations. As far as churn for our customers, what we found is once they get above some small threshold deployed with our system, we actually haven't lost a customer that's gone more than 33% deployed with Gimme.
Great. Question?
If you don't want to answer this question, that's fair, but if you think of this as a beachhead market, even though you're fully engrossed in it, if you think of it as a beachhead market, what other areas do you think you could bring this to?
So I love what's happening right now. For 30 years, vending hasn't changed. And now all of a sudden we have Amazon Go, and you can get boxes mailed to you, and pretty soon drones will just drop things in your hand when you feel hungry, and it's like all this is happening in such a short amount of time. It's really, really exciting. And so for us, as the industry moves from the box, a steel box with a plate glass in front of it, to shelves of product that you just pick up and grab, a micro market, which our new product is designed for, as the world moves to just grab, scan, walk away, that's going to do some wonderful, wonderful things to our industry and therefore to us as a technology company that takes us from, oh, you're a vending machine company to, oh, Amazon wants to play in your space and now you're super cool again. Like, oh, great. So for what we've seen in dollar amounts, 5 years ago, most of our customers got 100% of their revenue from vending machines. Now they're seeing that shrink to about 50% of the revenue is coming from vending machines and 50% is coming from micro markets. And this is in a span of just a couple of years. So just now, the whole industry has flipped, and that's exciting.
And so you might or might not be doing something related to micro markets, but if you were, what is a micro market?
A micro market is a shelf of products with a U-scan self-checkout next to it. So you can walk up, see something you like, take it off the shelf, scan it, swipe your card, walk away. You might see them in airports where they just have the sandwiches out on display, but more commonly they're in office buildings where you can control the type of the person that's getting in and out of it.
Has anybody seen this in an office building where it's basically the kitchen for the employees, but it's stocked with a bunch of drinks and snacks, and you just grab it and go. And there's no attendant, but it is your own office.
Right.
So people have seen that before?
I've seen them in hotels.
Oh, yeah, hotels now, too. Not to bring up a dirty word, but WeWork has just introduced micro markets through their system. Because they're not as cool as ATV, you know, they charge their people to eat food, and we get to eat it here included.
Yeah, aside from foam parties and drugs, what else did you learn from the vending machine industry and the employees that you worked with out in the field?
So the biggest thing is a focus on process and a focus on speed. These are guys that, like, if there were Olympics for bags putting in spaces, like these guys that'll be competing for the gold medal. I mean, it's amazing. Empty hand, full hand. 4 products in each hand, 8 products total. They roll it into a spot. Like 5 seconds later, it's done. And then our process is the thing that slows them down, which is why we view success as the fewer interactions that they have with us, the better that we see our job is going, which might be a little counterintuitive for other apps where you want user engagement, you want them to spend a longer amount of time in the app. Ours is we want them to get their day done as fast as possible, so the less they're paused, you know, tapping and selecting, the better job that we did. So the focus on speed, focus on process are the biggest things that we learned from customer discovery from the driver side. From the operator side, it went back to the business value. How do we make sure that they have the right things on the truck so machines aren't left partially filled? How do we make sure all the money makes it back home? How do we make sure that they're routing intelligently? Did that answer the question?
Nick?
Hey, Cory.
Hey,
Good
Nick.
story. I didn't know any of this, so really good background story. So I'm assuming a lot of the customers you have, they're not switching from a competitor. Is that the majority? You're bringing them into this experience for the first time?
We're the first app-based system that many of our customers have used.
Okay.
Since we've launched now 4 years ago, we do have some competition in the space. So our last couple of clients used theirs first and switched to us.
Really?
But for the most part, we were going in greenfield.
So with that, you're kind of educating a new market to do a process potentially different than they've ever done it before in their entire lives. When you talked about feature development and you were going out in the field and you were saying, hey, you know, your drivers look at colors versus the way you do it now, and you give them a little bit of advice, how does that play a role in the development process and kind of when you're making those new features, having them dictate features to you, which you incorporate into the app where the whole community uses? How do you make the decision on what gets put in based off what someone's doing today versus what you feel the community should have as an experience?
So what we're really sensitive about is allowing customers to tell us what feature to add in. And we feel pretty strongly that that's what they're paying us to do. We are the architect in this case of what the system should do to implement the needs that they have. So we'll readily listen to feature advice, but what we probe more deeply for is what is the pain that you're encountering? Is it wrong thing in the wrong spot? And let's observe why that's happening. Let's put a GoPro on a driver here and here so that we can see where they're looking and where their hands are going. Let us do that work and then start to create the solution that'll work and let us pitch you the solution. But don't try to tell us, like, you should move the box over here. Tell us what pain that is causing, and we can go back and revisit it.
Is the GoPro, is that a real story?
Yes.
So you got a driver to have a GoPro here and here?
Yes. And we were able to see, oh, okay, hands and their eyes are here, but their hands are here. They're loading things here, and then the process stops, and they're either doing this or doing that.
That's awesome. Talk about customer discovery.
Colleen, you just went through a couple hours of GoPro video from a couple weeks ago, right? 40 minutes?
You talked about problem statement in physical inventory counting before you deployed your product. Since then, what is your inventory accuracy? Have you taken them from what to what?
So it's hard to know what the inventory accuracy was before Gimme because they weren't aware of how inaccurate they were before. If you, for instance, had 10,000 machines and now you're down to 6,000, in reality, is that a 40% improvement in accuracy, or is that like an infinite percentage increase in accuracy? So for products, so the best way that we can measure product accuracy is indirectly. We don't know how, if you will, inaccurate it was before Gimme, but we could measure things like how many products went out and never found a home and then came back in. Or how many times was a spiral completely empty and therefore missing sales. And so in those areas, we can see the rate of products going out and finding a home has dropped substantially for one customer, less than 1% now of products that. So we've seen a dramatic improvement in product accuracy. For most customers, it's about half. So if you were sending 10,000 products out a week and then 2,000 are coming home, we might be able to cut that down to 1,000 products coming home, so from 2,000 down to 1,000. Just to use round numbers.
Great, time for one last question.
Are you collecting data on what's getting consumed most from vending machines, and then are you going to like a PepsiCo and selling that data, or have you thought about that? Like, are you tracking what items in each vending machine are getting sold the most?
We are tracking that information anonymously. Privacy is really important to a lot of our vending operators. So we're not saying that customer is selling this many Doritos, but we are understanding that here's how Doritos sells, for example, in the Southeast, or here's how Doritos do in hospital-like or medical-like environments. That's data that we collect today. We don't have a buyer for that information, so for now it's information that may be valuable later, either for future development of our own or maybe to a product manufacturer.